We acknowledge the Darug people of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of the land we work on. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging.
Always was, always will be.
Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast Mindkshetra Talks, Lost in Translation. We are a mother and daughter duo, Indian Australians living in Sydney. We are using our personal experiences and insights to connect and relate with people with similar experiences.
We are using this podcast as our voice to unpack topics that are often lost in translation within our South Asian community. We are doing this podcast with the intention to break down the barriers in communication that may exist between parents and children, and we hope to offer some talking points to instigate these conversations.
All right. Welcome to the second season, first episode of the podcast, Mindkshetra Talks, Lost in Translation. We are here today in person, finally. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it. I can't believe that we are in a studio space and we are trying to do this a little bit more professionally than we did last season.
Yep.
And it's exciting, and we have tried to change a few things around and also brought some art in.
Definitely.
So one of the things this season which we are going to try is kind of talk about how we're going to focus a lot on mental health, of course, and we are also going to incorporate some kind of art making during the session because
Definitely.
I'm an art therapist, and I'm hoping to create great content with you. And do you want to start with what's taken us so long to start season 2 and what we have to cover this in this episode, what the listeners can expect?
I think the reason it took so long to start this season, and this episode, inevitably, is I think that personally I was going through a lot, and you actually don't realize how much doing creativity takes out of you. And I'm in my final year of film school, so that's been a lot, and it's been quite intense.
Yeah.
And my mental health was sort of very up and down during this time, which sort of prompted me to seek therapy.
Okay.
And I don't know if a lot of people know that, is that I see a therapist. And I think the main reason was that because you were a driving force in that. I think that's not something everybody can relate to, that a parent will almost force you to see a therapist.
I wouldn't like to call it force. In parenting terms, I call it gentle negotiation and influencing. But I'm glad I did that. I know one of the conversations we had during that time was, you are a therapist, why can't you help me? Why can't you give me some kind of pointers? And I was keen for you to go out and do your own research and find some therapists. So what today's episode is going to be all about?
Therapy.
Therapy, South Asians seeking therapy.
Definitely.
The scene of therapy, how is it? And we are going to unpack some words which are thrown around. And that's what the focus of this particular episode, as we written back, is going to be.
Yes.
As to debunking some of the myths which are there about therapy and talking about why is therapy important for us.
A what?
Why is therapy important for us?
A P important? Is that what you said?
Therapy.
I heard P important. Why
Peeing is important, but we are talking about
That's
therapy.
a different conversation.
Completely, for a different time. Completely.
Why is therapy important for us? And is therapy important for us? And does everybody need to go to therapy? I think that's a big question. Does everybody actually need to go?
If you ask me, I think I've got a different worldview on. I think everybody needs to go to therapy, but we'll start with your research on finding therapists and what were some of the criteria you went by to find a therapist.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I would want you to quickly talk about what were some of the things when you say you were stressed and you were not able to cope, and because there is often this this dialogue or this understanding that mental health often gets confused with mental illness. So I want you to clarify what is the distinguish, or what did you find, or what did you learn about taking care of your mental health? And I do know if it's okay for you to share a little bit about what is it, why were you seeking therapy, and then I can talk to you about, and you can ask me any questions you want.
So a little backstory is I've been seeing 2 therapists, not at the same time. Don't worry.
I hope not.
Yeah, I'm not cheating on my therapist.
I don't think it's cheating if you're seeing 2 therapists. It's okay.
Anyway, maybe that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I started therapy back in 2022, 21 when my grandma passed away.
Yeah.
For reasons of grief and loss. And then basically I had one therapist and, she was fine and things like that. But I found myself leaving sort of not improved after the session.
You're not a cow who has to be.
As in?
You're talking about therapy as if somebody can fix you.
What I mean is like when I feel like when you leave a therapy session, you're supposed to be feeling like, I feel better than I did when I came in here.
Sometimes that doesn't happen immediately. Yeah,
but I feel like that should happen eventually.
But that's I think that's a lot of expectation you have when you go on a therapy session itself. Sometimes therapy takes a while for you to kind of navigate and find out if you're a good fix. But you tell me your story. So what you're trying to say is you didn't find that relational aspect with the therapist going on. And how many sessions did you give?
I think, first off, therapy is expensive. So
it is very
that
expensive,
impacted the amount of sessions I went. I think I went about 10-ish over the course of
with the same therapist.
Yeah. Over the course of maybe, I want to say a couple of months. And then, something just didn't work out and then we never really saw each other again. And then the second time. So did you part on bad ways, or did you actually? No, it was just kind of just the timings didn't work out. So it was a mutual breakup, shall I say.
Okay.
And then I started up therapy again for reasons I won't disclose as of yet.
Don't worry. But it was not a mental health disorder. I think that is what I'm trying to
No, it was just a life adversity.
Okay.
Yeah. And
do you want to go a little bit on what are different kinds of life adversity? I know it, and I know what you're talking about. So I just want the
life adversity
listeners to know
in a
as well.
simplest way would be if you have falling outs with people, just situations in your life haven't aligned.
It could be relationship issues. It could be
family
family with issues. It could be issues which are affecting how you perceive yourself. It could be your inability to manage time. It could be how your expectations out of life is not meeting up with what it is. It could be grief. It could be a number of things which are happening at the same time.
Pretty much.
Or dealing with a bad relationship, either at work, at home, or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the reason I started, because of a particular life adversity in my life. And it's been a few months since that adversity has happened. But not gonna lie, still affects me here and there in the same way. But I think that was the reason I started therapist. But in terms of the research, I think for me, if we're talking about deal breakers of therapists, it's not a deal breaker, but it's your criteria. Is that I was particularly looking for a South Asian therapist. And I think the reason why I was doing that is because I want to try and find someone who is comes from the same background as me. So if I talk about certain issues which pertain culturally, they'll understand where I'm coming from. But in saying that, I don't think it was a deal breaker for me, because I think the amount of South Asian therapists there are in Sydney is so less that it makes that bubble very very small.
Mm.
And I guess I wanted to ask.
Unless you want to try online therapy. Right?
But I think talking in person is a different frequency.
See, if you ask me, yes, talking in person is great. However, what I would suggest is some therapy is better than no therapy.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, if you can go in person and
Mm-hmm.
sort of express yourself without any Wi-Fi problems,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the best, I think.
I think so. And one of your frustrations were also with me because you were continuously hounding me for therapy tips, like as if I'm on Instagram. You know, you would see all these Instagram reels and Facebook reels, and you would be like, why can't you be the one to tell me? Why are you kind of forcing me to go to therapy?
Yeah. But we can get into that a bit later.
Yeah.
But I mean, back to my question is, as a South Asian therapist yourself, why is it that there are so few of them? And when I mean few, maybe I haven't done enough extensive research, but
So
there's not as many as like Caucasian therapy.
I think therapy as a concept in South Asian cultures, it's pretty new. Shockingly, I found my first therapist only when I was studying counseling.
Yeah.
And it was actually part of what you call a pre-requirement for the course, that I had to find a counselor for myself. And I think as a concept in itself, finding therapy is a little, it's improving a lot. There is a lot more South Asian therapists who are there, who actually do counseling and everything. And in terms of art therapy, there are very fair few. It is improving. But I think in a South Asian context, going to talk about somebody about your family problem, especially if you have been raised and conditioned to say that we never discuss anything, even with outsiders. We don't even share it with our aunts and uncles. You know, everything happens in secrecy. There are a lot of things which we don't share with even our closest ones. And we kind of find it like it's a weakness to talk about our family problems outside. And also, we also have a very collective culture where we have been in constant touch with people all the time, and there was a support system. So I think therapy as a concept itself did not exist, that you have to go to somebody, gives them some money, and then talk to them about your problems. Especially a stranger. That is number one. Number two is also about this concept that if you go to a therapist, there is something inherently wrong with you. You're not able to deal with a particular kind of problem. And that's where I think a lot of confusion comes between mental health and mental illness, because mostly in South Asian cultures, you go and seek outside help if you can't fix it yourself.
Yeah.
So which means if you can't fix it yourself,
then it must
that
be
means
something like really bad.
That means it must be an illness.
Yes.
And that illness needs a
if you
specialist.
Think about it in like medical terms, you only go to the doctor if you're like so unwell. If you have like a tiny cold.
That's true, right? And it's also good, right, that you want to kind of do all the natural remedies at home, and you want to take care of your own stuff, which is great. But also what sometimes it does is it creates a resistance when you have to go and seek outside help, because you don't know how to communicate your problems. You think they are going to judge you, because you are surrounded by a lot of judgment when it comes to South Asian communities as well, right? And I'm I'm the first counselor in my family. I'm the first art therapist person to do art therapist. And most commonly, I'll tell this jokingly, people, when I was studying counseling, and we'll come to this question about the terms. When I was studying counseling, and I would tell my mom I'm studying counseling, God bless her, she's no more, but she would call me, she'd tell all my relatives, my daughter is going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still think I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
Which comes from the medical model of being a psychiatrist.
Yes. I feel like that's a good segue into the different like therapy terms that you go, because I feel like you can get I even got overwhelmed. So for the listeners, a crash course, listeners or viewers, if you can give like a crash course into each therapy term, therapy title, how it differs, and like what you would get from going to each one.
Okay.
So like
we'll start from the most rigid model.
Therapist
A therapist is like an umbrella term
Okay.
which we use. So
Amazing.
it's an umbrella term we use for people.
Mhm.
Therapist shrink in
Yeah.
in an American thing,
Yeah.
or therapist, or all the people who you kind of do. Therapist is somebody who you can go to seek to help you cope with either problems or life adversity.
Yeah.
Umbrella term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll go from the medical model to the non-medical model. When
Okay.
I say medical model, a psychiatrist is somebody who trains as a doctor.
That's like, okay.
They have to complete n number of general hours, and then they specialized into psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
And they do the study of medicine, and they do the study of mental health disorders, who will be able to administer medications. Psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders. They are people who are able to give you medication, depression, who are able to prescribe medications for mental health disorders.
Yep.
Psychiatrist. It comes from the medical model. They are the highest level of education. It takes a very long time to take a study
Become a
as a psychiatrist,
Yep.
and a psychiatrist is a doctor.
Okay. A type of doctor.
A doctor,
Like
a
a
type
neuro-
of doctor, like a neurologist, a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Then we will have psychologists who also, particularly in Australia, they have to do extensive study. 4 years bachelor's, then they have like a set thing which they have to do. They have to study for a certain number of years undergraduate, then they have to do postgraduate, and then they may do a doctorate degree. A psychologist studies human behavior.
Okay.
Psychologists can be organizational psychologists, clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, somebody who is in the study of behaviors. So they have the knowledge and are trained extensively to do assessments
Okay.
and diagnose mental health conditions. And some of them are practicing as counseling psychologists. Some of them give talk therapy as well. So if you go to them, and if you have a child or anybody, you have to do a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and those kind of disorders, you would go to a psychologist again. They could be doctors who have completed PhDs, not the medical model doctors who have got them internship in saving a life, but they are doctors, right? They can be PhDs.
So what's the difference between because if both a psychiatrist,
A psychiatrist is a medical model, like a medicine professional, right? So when you are going to study for a doctor, a cardiologist, you are a doctor who has actually done the Master of Science and Master of Medicine and all that, right? So that's a degree like that. This is a doctor where you do a PhD, a research-based degree, and you can be a psychologist based on that. Some psychologists may not have done their PhDs, but they still have to do that 4+6 plus then 1 year provisional
and they
psychologist.
are provisional psychologists.
They could be for 1 year they be a provisional psychologist, and then they become a full-blown psychologist, and they could be specializing in anything.
And even
organizational
in the
psychologist.
psychology umbrella, there's like clinical psychologist, provisional psychologist.
So provisional psychologist is somebody who is trying to get into a thing, who is kind of doing an internship to become a full psychologist. They have to practice for a certain number of years. But yes, in psychologist, you can have organizational psychologists. They study how people in organization work, what happens. They could be people who study the markets, the behavior of people in an organization. They could be clinical psychologist. They could be counseling psychologists. So when you go to a psychologist, they are somebody who can administer and diagnose certain mental health conditions. They can't prescribe medicines.
Provisional psychologist.
Any psychologist, they can't prescribe medicine, but they can diagnose. They are trained to administer those assessments, read those assessments. They are also doing a lot of research on how human behavior works. Then comes this term psychotherapist or a counselor. Okay? People get confused between psychotherapist and a psychologist.
Yeah.
Now, the main
Explain.
difference comes from the number of years you have to train.
Isn't that what everything comes down to?
It does, but also what you can do. a psychotherapist or a counselor is not able to diagnose or administer any type of assessments. So you cannot be diagnosed by somebody. Like if you come to me, and I'm an art therapist, and I'll tell you one more who an art therapist is. If you go to a psychotherapist or a counselor, they cannot diagnose you with illness, but they will be able to give you strategies to cope with those conditions. Some of those conditions may need prescription of medication, which means they will ask you to go to a psychiatrist. Okay. You got it?
I think so.
Okay. Some of the counseling. So, for example, if you've gone to somebody and they are going, this sounds like this is a proper mental health disorder, like a depression, like anxiety. You're going to a counselor, and you have obsessive compulsive disorder, or you have you have a depression, or you have anxiety disorder of any kind, or you have to be the counselor or the psychotherapist suspects you may be on the spectrum for autism, or you might have ADHD, and there has been no diagnosis at all, then they might refer you to a psychologist, because they are the ones who can administer those tests and actually give you the assessment results of, yes, is there a diagnosis or is there not a diagnosis. Then the psychologist might say, if there is a diagnosis based on the severity of it, they might say, you might need medications to manage your situation, which means a psychologist cannot prescribe those medications. Then you go to a psychiatrist. Am I making sense?
Kind of. It's very like a lengthy, wordy process.
It is a lengthy, wordy process. So if you have a mental health disorder and you need medication, you would be going to a psychiatrist. You will normally be referred to a psychiatrist. If you need a diagnosis assessment, you need some counseling done. Psychologists also can kind of do counseling. So if you need that done and need to learn some strategies on what happens, human behavior, you go to a psychologist. You can go to a counselor where you're going through life adversity, you're going through grief, and you need to talk to somebody. You need to learn some strategies, and you go to a counselor. And a psychotherapist, counselor, psychotherapist, interchangeable words. An art psychotherapist is somebody like me who uses art therapy as a medium to talk to people about their feelings, thoughts, and also helps you learn strategies to cope with them.
Using art as a medium.
So the art we create is not about the product of the art.
It's about the process.
It is about the process. So for example, today for me, this particular canvas, if you can see it, represents new beginning.
Yeah.
A kind of a collaboration and a sense of partnership.
Yes.
In a different level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what this particular artwork means for me, and how we have been doing it while we have been talking about mental health. So that's the meaning making of it. And most often what people confuse with when it comes to art therapy is that they think that they need to be creative, or they need to have certain kind of skills to do art therapy. Actually, you don't. If you have ever done any kind of problem solving, and even I say this sometimes, that it's okay even if you have never, ever, ever even lifted a pencil or a pen, the mark you make is based to express what you feel inside. So it's never about the art being perfect. So art therapy is actually you can learn a totally different language, because sometimes talking about things can be very harsh. So that's an art therapist. That's what an art therapist does.
That was an interesting crash course in therapy. I feel like you can go back and listen to this as many times as you want, because it will get like confusing. But I think my hot question is, if you're like a complete newbie wanting to go into therapy, what would be the best avenue, and to narrow and refine the search so you don't really get like bombarded with all these terms, who would be the best therapist to find?
Okay, it depends on what you are seeking therapy for.
Okay, let's give some scenarios.
Okay, so for example,
let's say you are someone you are as someone. You are someone who is going through relationship problems.
Okay.
That's the reason you start therapy, but then as you go into therapy, like you start bringing up things from like childhood and stuff. But the initial reason that, because I feel like, maybe I'm just a little side note, I feel like the reason people seek therapy is because of a life adversity. And I know that your take on this is to go to therapy even before problems start happening. But I feel like for the main people, like the reason you want to seek therapy is when there's a problem.
Yeah.
So
That's normally what happens, right?
what would be, so going back to the example, if you're going through like relationship problems, for example, who would be the best therapist to Google search?
I would be Google searching my problem area. So if relationship counseling, I would put relationship counseling.
Yeah.
These are the ways I find a therapist for myself. The first thing I do is a therapist in the area.
Yeah.
The second thing I am most concerned about, for me personally, is the culture they come from.
Yeah.
So I would do South Asian relationship counseling or South Asian therapist for grief, South Asian therapist for mental health, South Asian therapist for, and I would look at the area. Now, a psychiatrist would be the most expensive to go through. You will need a psychiatrist if you are thinking that there is some kind of symptom which is happening, like you're forgetting, you're doing something, you are, not able to get up from bed for a very long time. You have all those things are happening and it seems quite grave, right? There's no harm, and you'll have a long waiting list. Of course, it is going to cost you around $300 to $500, $300, depending upon the amount of time they have spent to learn to become a psychiatrist is equivalent to the amount of money you're paying for the expertise. Yeah. So, psychiatrist, for a relationship counselor, you may not be seeking a psychiatrist. So then comes the choice between a psychologist and a relationship counselor. I would go to a relationship counselor or a psychologist who has specialized in relationship counseling based on my ability to pay.
So it would come down to the going to a relationship counselor versus a psychologist.
Practical way. That's the practical way. However, if I had a South Asian counselor and a non-South Asian psychologist, I personally would prefer a South Asian counselor.
Because
for me, culture and understanding the culture trumps the relationship or the expertise they can give me. And I'll tell you why, because it's very nuanced when it comes to relationships in a South Asian culture. Now, I might sound like I'm promoting a lot of South Asian cultures. Probably I am. But I think does that mean there are no other counselors? No. I think if I can't find anybody, any kind of counseling is better than no counseling. So, how would I know? What I might do also, which I think I have encouraged you to do, book appointments with both of them.
Yes.
Which was something you didn't like doing because you were like money, money, money. I kind of think for people, when you go out and buy a great dress, and if you're going to buy it for a party, you never kind of hesitate to pay for it if it's $150, $200, $300, because you are concentrating on how good it is going to make you feel on the day you wear this. Now, going through a psychologist or a mental health professional is an investment. It's an investment in yourself which will last for more than an event.
Yeah.
It will change. When you find the correct one, it will change the outlook of your life.
Definitely.
And if you are hesitating to invest that money, then I'm going to ask you, when will you invest in yourself?
Oh, that was deep.
Yeah. Deep.
Yeah, that was deep. And you know what, girl math, if the psychologist or therapist is eligible for Medicare rebate and then you pay now and then the rebate comes back later, that's like free money. That's like
it's not.
So think
girl
about
math or not,
yes, it is. Because if you pay now and then the rebate comes like 2 weeks later, it'll be like, oh, I just
you
earned
still
some
have
money.
To pay the difference,
but
right?
if the rebate comes later, they'll be like, I just got some extra money in my pocket. Comment down
listen
below.
don't listen. Comment
Back
down
me
if-
up if you agree. I think so.
I don't like this girl math series.
I
but we'll
love
come
girl
to-
maths. Girl maths is iconic.
That is what makes us sound like we are stupid. We are not stupid. We are intelligent, really well informed women who can take a beautiful decisions on our own well being.
Yes.
Okay. So, and we'll come to the Medicare part as well. So, why I would encourage you to go to both of them? Because bottom line, counseling
Yes.
is a very relational experience.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how knowledgeable the counselor or the therapist is, including myself. If you're not able to relate or connect to them, the work will not be done.
Yeah.
So, if it takes you 2 appointments to go to 2 therapists, I normally encourage you to do that. If you can only afford 1 therapist and you can go to them, I would be somebody who will not commit to the therapy immediately. I will go have my appointment and then I will wait. I don't know if anybody is going to crucify me for this, and this is what I would do. The tea is that this is what I encourage my clients to do. Not every psychologist or counselor or art therapist might do this, but we offer at Mindkshetra. I offer at Mindkshetra a preliminary session where they can come and see me, and it's complimentary because I am very, very keen that relational experience works. And then I ask them not to kind of commit immediately, to go back and make an informed decision.
Yep.
So these are the signs. These are the signs I would encourage everybody to look out for when you go to a therapist. When you go to a therapist, don't make superficial decisions on the amount of time you pay. Make decisions based on how you feel and how they are connecting with you, because you will know it. You will feel a little bit much more settled. You should be able to share or open up a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't happen in one session, but you generally have a feeling of whether or not you will get along with this person. They are highly trained professionals. Most of them are highly trained professionals, and they have a lot of ethics when it comes to working with clients. At least the people I know of. So I'm not going to generalize, because if somebody listens to it, say, oh, I went to a psychologist and I had a bad experience. Yes, they are human beings too. So they could be a range of things, but mostly highly trained individuals, very ethical. So they are trained to listen to you and understand and pick up if this is not working. And it doesn't have to be just verbally it is not working. You will sense it. So go with the feeling. If you get to if you get up in the morning and you go, I
have to go to therapy, then that's probably a sign you need to change therapists. And
just think of therapy. Or if you feel like that, it is either a sign that you need to change a therapist, or that you are withholding something from the therapist and the therapist is not able to help you. Correct.
I just think of therapy like dating, because simplest, because it just takes, you got to try different ones and see which one.
I don't like the analogy of dating, but I'll go with it.
Am I onto something? It's like trying, like it's like forming a friendship, It's very risky when you call it dating, because this idea, there is this notion, and I think you would want to like dating as an analogy. It's not. Don't take it literally. But yes, I know what you're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
How sometimes people fall in love with their therapists. And by falling in love, I mean not like this, but like you look at your therapist like a mother, a father.
You try and replace
friend.
Yes, you try and replace the relationship issues or whatever the bond you're missing in your life. It can happen, and it happens. How do I call this? It's one of the risks of the therapist should be able to hold their boundaries and understand and kind of navigate through that. But it is common for people.
How common?
It is common for people, because we are all people on a very human relationship. Human level, we want to relate, right? And say, for example, if you are going to solve some personal relationships with your mother, and in that therapy, they are creating the absolute safe environment for you to understand how this relationship should be,
dynamic and-
this dynamic should be, and you're correcting the dynamic and you're learning strategies, it can be very natural and common for you to have that kind of affection and form that relationship or look at them at that way. Again, the therapist will be able to pick up on that and kind of nurture that relationship and hold the boundaries. But it is also very easy. It also works if the client can pay attention to what is happening as well, and then they'll be able to realize, and then you
Client
get a
or
realization.
therapist?
Normally, the therapist will be holding the boundaries, but you will feel it too sometimes. Like we watched this movie, Tears in the Gay,
Good film.
And then
I
it was,
enjoyed
I really love that movie. Who will not fall in love with Shah Rukh Khan? Come on. Listen, if Shah Rukh Khan is listening to this, I want to say I love you. I watch all your movies. I do your dance step. I'm digressing. And I also love Alia, but love kisses to both of them. But okay. Back on the topic. Rupa, just dial down. Okay. What were we talking about? Shah Rukh Khan.
You were talking about how in the movie. Okay, heads up. If you haven't seen the movie, check it out. But
This is not a promotion for the movie,
no,
but
it's
this
not.
is one
but
of the
this is
highly
example
recorded.
because in the movie she falls in love with Shah Rukh Khan, who plays the therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it and I was like, why? But
No,
that's no,
sorry,
not
she
why.
doesn't fall in love
She
with the
does.
therapist.
She says, "I like-"
She thinks she has fallen in love with it. There is a difference between falling in love and thinking that you are in love, which Shah Rukh Khan correctly states back and says, no, you think you are in love with me, but you're not in love with me. You're in love with the idea of having somebody who can listen to you the way I listen to you, and what I have taught you is how to look out for that. Now it's turn for you to take all that knowledge and apply it outside the world, not with me. That is the essence of the movie. Now, they don't say it in so many words and it's not like that.
That's
but
the subtext.
That's the subtext. That you go to therapy because a therapist or a psychologist or anybody in a mental health professional who can help you with mental health adversity or mental health disorders is somebody there to teach you practical life skills, strategies, sometimes give you medication to help manage your mental health. You would go for a headache to a doctor to find out the different causes for it. The analogy I can give for people who don't go to a doctor or who don't want to go and see a mental health professional is, it's like saying, I have a headache.
Yeah.
But if I go to a doctor, that means I have a cancer or a tumor. You assuming that you only go to a doctor.
Okay.
If you've got cancer or tumor, and headaches can't happen for any other reason.
Interesting.
Headaches can happen because of poor eyesight. Headaches can happen poor of indigestion. Headaches can happen because of migraine. Headaches can happen because something else is happening.
Sure.
And yes, headaches can happen if you've got tumors as well, or if it is something else. But not every headache means you have tumor or something bad is going to happen to you. So not every mental health adversity needs to be a mental health, may lead to a mental health disorder.
Yeah, but it's good to go and check it out. And
yeah, and I also want to say why I encourage people to go to therapy before something happens, and why in Mindkshetra, we encourage young people to come and kind of find out if creativity is one way they can take care of their mental health on a regular basis, is because of this. Because therapy is highly relational. Okay? When you are in a time of stress, you will be at the mercy of finding somebody and relieving, like you will not be
like trauma dumping and like
yes, and you will not be relaxed.
Shoulder.
You will not be relaxed. You will say like select a therapist because you are now in the attire need, this great need to find somebody to talk to, and you're like, just want somebody
to
talk.
Get it off my chest.
Yes,
and then I feel like when they give you, and this is something
which has happened to you.
I think this is something I got from a therapist I spoke to like a while ago. And she said the best thing is you have to even because in therapy they do give you homework
Mm-hmm.
to like, they can only talk to you and like tell you how to do those things, but the real work in therapy actually happens outside.
Mm-hmm.
So to do that, you need to kind of be in a relaxed state to
Mhm.
make informed decisions. It's like in the same way people tell you don't like make emotional impulsive choices.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, when you're actually relaxed and you are a little bit, got your head on your shoulders, you can kind of look at it a little bit clearer, not through
Mhm.
like rose-colored glasses or like through an anxiety or like stress lens. And I feel like you're also able to absorb the information more. Because I feel like also in my experience, when I was super upset or super, stressed, my main thing was like, how can I leave this room like feeling normal?
Yeah, your expectations are a lot more.
Can
and
I just
think
take like some medication that will just take this feeling? I feel like that's how you want to feel, like that by the time you
you
leave
want
this room,
instant gratification, and therapy is
gratification.
not like that. So I encourage people, like how you would find a GP for yourself for your physical health needs, I think everybody needs to have a therapist. So which means you have to go find out a therapist. Like, because if you have a mind, you have some kind of adversity or personal development you might be working on. So flash news, therapists don't only help if you have a mental health adversity. They can help you with the time management, personal development, reaching goals, how to have a growth mindset, how to be better in your relationships. Those are all investment in yourself. And if you're doing it when you are relaxed and when you don't have this thing, when actually something happens to you, it becomes easier. So I'm not saying, go to therapy every month. No, find a therapist for yourself and say, even if you go once in 3 months or once in 6 months, you still have got a relationship with them where you know that you have somebody who you can go to talk to, right? That's where I think psychotherapists and counselors could be handy because the fees and the charges will also be a little bit less. Why does Medicare not cover counselors and psychotherapists and art therapists at the moment? It is purely how the system is set up. It has got nothing to do with the quality of care you would be receiving. Counselors, art therapist, especially if you are working, another thing I would like you to do is check out where they have which kind of, there is regulatory bodies which tells them which level of counselors they are, ACA or PAFCA. If they are counselors, ACA is Australian Counselling Association, PAFCA is professional. PAFCA, you look it up, I know what it is, but it's just not coming to me at the moment. So these are two regulatory bodies. Then there are mental health social workers as well. So you just look up the credentials of that person in their website to see. And for art therapists in Australia, there is an organization called ANZACATA. Yeah, Australia, New Zealand, Asian. So just look at their credentials. If they are a psychologist, you will know. If they are a provisional psychologist, where they have studied, you will know what kind of counselors they are. Look at their credentials, do a little bit of research, and then go to them. Yeah, that's what you should do. End of the story. And don't think that the money is like, oh my God, it's too much. Yes, I understand. I do believe that all this should be rebated, but that's a different conversation in itself. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
And does having lastly, I want to finish this conversation with where we started. Why, as a parent, I think, even I'm a therapist, and why I think we need to have a separate therapist is because...
And having a therapist parent, does that mean I get free therapy?
Yes.
No. Yes and no.
Okay.
I want to elaborate.
Okay. I'll just say this. I think because I am a therapist, I'm much more conscious and aware of some of the parenting decisions I make. But caveat, I'm a human. My relationship with my daughter as a parent is completely different to how I can't be her therapist because I will not have the objectivity, or I'll be blindsided by all the things which I have done and the emotional relationship I have.
Yeah.
That's why they say you can't be your own doctor. You can't be your own doctor. So it's very important that, do you get free therapy? You get insights
Therapy therapeutic informed advice. Yes.
Therapeutic informed advice. I don't think I give you advice. Do I give you advice? Because you're an adult now. I've got a strict policy under not advising adults, but I do state my opinion. I do ask you to reconsider very kindly sometimes what you have decided, and then I leave it up to you because
because advice is a suggestion, not a decision.
Correct. You don't have to take every
Put
advice.
that on a t-shirt.
What was that you're going to put on a t-shirt?
Quote of the day.
Yes.
Advice is not a advice is a suggestion, not a decision.
Okay, I'll put that on my advice. Is it?
If you take anything from this episode, that would be it.
Okay,
That's what I will take.
So okay, are we going to reflect? We haven't even finished
Yes.
the artwork. Okay,
This is what I made.
this is what it's happening. We'll finish it. We are just trying to kind of get along. It's
Definitely.
coming somewhere.
We've been talking for a while.
We have been. So, do you want to end this?
I will end
episode?
this episode. Is that the things that I learned
Yes.
going to therapy is that you can change the therapist if you want to, and they really probably won't be offended. Well, I hope they wouldn't. But anyway, even if they are, you can't control what other people think.
Correct. I think people won't be offended as long as you're having a proper conversation and you're making an informed decision. First of all, I think the first takeaway is it's okay to seek therapy. And I think everybody needs to have a therapist. The second tool is that, yes, you can change your therapist, and finding the right therapist is the key.
Mm.
What was the third takeaway for you?
And the third one is that the real work doesn't happen inside therapy.
Yes.
It happens outside.
100%.
Wow, that was a very insightful conversation for the first episode of season 2. We hope you guys enjoyed. Let us know your thoughts, opinions, views, and stay tuned for more upcoming episodes.
Do
for
you
this
want to tell
season's-
them, other than finding a professional space, we also have another surprise coming for them?
But we'll leave that as a surprise.
Oh, yeah. It's a good surprise, guys. You're going to love it.
We hope you do.
You're going to love it. I think you're going to love it. But let us know how we went with season 2 of the season 2 first episode of Mindkshetra Talks Lost in Translation, and share it with your loved ones. And I hope we brought some clarity to some of the things which you often have trouble talking with your young ones. And thank you, Rithi, for organizing this space.
Thank
and
you,
I love
Rupa,
this
for being
space.
part of this conversation.
அடிவிடும் திருப்பி ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ணு அடிவிடும் ரூபா திருப்பி ரெக்கார்ட் பண்ணு say it again. So thank you so much for
Thank you, Rupa, for joining.
நிஜமா அடிவிடும் ஏய்
Bye.
சரியா சொல்லு
Bye.
அட்லீஸ்ட் ரூபா பார்த்து சாரதியாவது சொல்லு
Say bye.
பாய்